Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm joined by Mark Stubler. Mark is a good friend of mine and has been for many years. He's the owner of Joe Homebuyer Franchising. We talk a ton about his leadership journey from going from being in sales to running a wholesale operation to running a franchise with wholesale operations across the entire United States. I will see you there. Mark, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Bro, thanks for having me on. This is awesome. I should tell anybody that's listening right here, right now, that Brandon is one of my favorite people, and have learned a lot from you, and I'm just grateful to be on your podcast here, brother.
I feel the exact same way about you, Mark. Like sometimes there's just like people who like click really well, like they share the same values, they understand, they see the world the same way in a lot of ways, but like different enough that you can learn a lot from them too. Like that's how I think we've always been. Back down to, I mean, how many years has it been? 8 years that we've
I think it's been
known
that
each
at
other,
least.
at least.
And it's
Yeah.
funny, people need to know how we met. Had we had new carpet in our place when you first came to our dungeon? When we first
Yes.
bought this dungeon, it was red, green carpet, orange carpet, all at the corner junction there, but at the end of the hall. But yeah, that's where the mastermind originated, is in our dungeon of an office.
Yeah. So once upon a time, I got this call, and this guy said, "Hey, I'm Mark Stubler. I'm in the home buying business, and I have tried working with every company I can to get PPC marketing that works, and I just can't find anything that works." And at the time, I didn't tell you this then, of course, but like I didn't really have a lot of experience with Google pay per click marketing. You were like, I remember specifically, you said like, "Hey, can you come by the office tomorrow and look at it for me?" And I was like, I had nothing going on tomorrow, but I was like, "Mark, I'm busy tomorrow. It's going to be next week." And then I spent like the whole next week like watching YouTube videos about Google
Yeah,
PPC
right.
so I could be ready to
Dog.
meet you in your office. And
Right.
yeah, and that's when we officially started working together, like so many years ago. And I was like just a kid, and you were a business owner that had a lot of really good pitches from a lot of people who actually knew what they were doing when it came to PPC. And actually every one of them was cheaper than than what I had proposed to you. And anyways, you still gave me a shot, and I'm grateful to this day.
Well, and I'd like to take some credit for, okay, maybe I have good instincts, or and I will tell you that maybe one of my instincts is observing quality talent or finding good people to associate with. But I don't know how I sniffed out a savant or something without even realizing it, because pretty quickly our world changed because of your expertise. And I don't know what it was that you sold me on. Again, people with far more experience, but yet I was convinced that you were the guy to hang our hat with, that we were in good hands with, yeah, your abilities. You demonstrated that well at a level that, so again, I don't know if it was just a stroke of genius, my instinct said yes, or if it was just dumb luck, probably dumb luck, and you just had a great sales pitch, but it worked out, man. It was the
Yeah.
beginning of a great journey.
Yeah, I think when I think back to what the sales pitch was, because I've never been like, you talk to a lot of marketers out there who are like, "I promise these results and this is going to work," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I'm not that guy, right? So I remember very specifically saying like to you, "These are the things that I would do in this account." And you're like, "Well, do you think that'll work?" And I pretty sure what I said is, "I don't know if that's going to work, but Mark, if that doesn't work, then these are the things I'm going to do. And if that doesn't
That's
work,
right.
these are the other things I'm going to do. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this work." And
But you were
that's
thinking outside the box, and you were
yeah.
coming with ambitious ideas and creativity. I'm like, that's what I need. Because we were stuck with a group, Brandon, we'd ask them to increase our budget and to increase the amount of deals we could get, and they just couldn't deliver. So you came in with a renewed energy and clarity of, you're right. If this doesn't work, then this is what we'll do, and this is what we'll try. And you know what? It worked. It created the clarity I needed, that I was working with another entrepreneur that was ambitious. And that's probably where the synergy really happened, is I'm like, look, at least this guy is honest with me, and at least this guy is going to try, and he's not going to be complacent like my current provider.
Yeah, it'll make sense. Well, complacent is not a word that describes me, for better or for worse, right? Or a lot of
That's right.
entrepreneurs. So for those of you that don't know, Mark, share a little bit about your story here, right? Because I have some pieces I could share, of course, but like, how'd you get into this whole real estate investing game, and what's the business that you're involved with now?
Yeah, thank you. So, Joe Homebuyer Franchising, we have approximately 50 franchisees across the country, depending on when you're listening to this, and that's been a journey of itself. We could unpack some of that, But we started out just in Utah as an investor, a wholesale company, did some rehabs, started about 10 years ago, just a little over 10 years now. And about a handful of years in, Brandon, we realized, hey, there's something here. We're getting unordinary results in a competitive market, and people are asking us what we're doing. So then we started thinking, I want to expand. What's the best way to expand? And I came across a potential mentor that I was able to sit down with, and he says, well, why don't you try franchising? I've franchised several products. We've done it successfully. And so I thought, okay, I want to explore this idea. And I like the model of franchising because that gives you a unique commitment to your partner, meaning our success as a franchisor is really beholden upon the success of our partner, our franchisee. They have to be producing revenue. They have to be successful in order for us to be successful. It also is a unique model. Alex Hormozi talks about it being such a powerful way to grow because you're leveraging somebody else's time and capital to grow your business. And, there's a lot of truth to that, when in reality, I see it very much as a partnership. I'm not having to front the capital for them to start. In fact, they have to make a commitment to leverage our brand and to be an ambassador of Joe. But we're aligned in the sense that if I provide the framework for success, if I help them scale and grow their existing investing operation, then we're partnered in the results type thing. Anyway, I went a little bit deep into that to just say why we went the path of franchising, but that's what started 6 years ago from really adopting this idea that franchising was going to be our way of expansion, because then I don't have to go hire a bunch of general managers in multiple markets. And although that's a viable option, it's a lot more expensive, and it puts you in a position where you're working with people that may not have the same buy-in, where a franchisee, they're bought in because it's their business.
Yeah, 100%. You skipped the part where you were the number one vinyl fence salesman in the United States, which is the glory days, I imagine, when you look back at those days.
Yeah, man,
That's a joke, of course.
And yeah, but what you're speaking to is, I actually, in all seriousness, vinyl fencing is not a glorious, not something. I don't have any of my old plaques hanging on my wall to celebrate my vinyl fencing days. But what I do have is a ton of experience, because I was in thousands and thousands of people's homes coming up with a solution for them. And that translated exceptionally well in real estate to sitting in a home, different product. It was selling myself in the way that we could help them move on to plan B in their lives. It's wild how well it translated, that type of experience. So for those of you that are looking to scale and grow your businesses, that's a nugget right there. If you can hire somebody that has B2C, so in the home of a buyer type product, windows, garage doors, decking, roofing, windows, any of those bigger products that they're used to having transacted, they're able to move product and they're having lots of opportunities, seems to translate extremely well, so long as they're obviously a high producer, execute well type sales individual. But yes, I was a salesman. It's what set the stage. Along the way, I did lots of different entrepreneurial things. But my owner came to me one day and said, hey, you're doing great. You're an outside sales rep. But to save money, we're going to have you come in half a day once a week. And by the way, I'm not sure that I was actually the top salesman in the entire Western United States. I can tell you we were one of the biggest companies in the Western United States, if not the biggest. And I had a lot of success, and I was there for 10 years. But I wasn't necessarily the most charismatic salesman, but I was extremely diligent and consistent, and I would work hard. And as a result, I got exceptional results. But he comes to me and says, hey, but I need you to work in the office once a week for half a day. And I considered it the pencil sharpening job. And because it was so drastic to just the way I perceived my impact, I realized it was like a trigger. I call it a gift now, Brandon. I essentially feel like he gave me a gift because he said, you don't own the company. You don't have full upside. You don't have complete autonomy of your schedule. You work for me. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I've always had these entrepreneurial, blood running through my veins. And yet I'm not fulfilling that aspect of my ambitions and my skill. And so that gift is what triggered the entrepreneurial journey, which put me on the path to becoming a wholesaler. And a few years in is when we've started to expand and grow. But so anyway, back to memory lane. There you have the further color behind the story there.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's good. It's good to have that sales skill jumping into this business, because obviously a lot of it translates. Although I imagine pretty quickly your business outgrew that sales skill. And
yes,
you were faced with the challenge of actually building a real business, not just, hey, Mark's really good at connecting with sellers and helping them move on to plan B, which is fantastic place to start. I'm curious what that journey was like for you, because I can tell you that journey for me was a nightmare in a lot of
It
ways.
is.
It's a hard journey.
It is a hard journey. And you hit it on the head. And here's the thing with sales, particularly in our industry, and I imagine it's with others, but really in real estate investing, if you're really good at acquisitions, you're really good at sales, the dispo part and all that, you can actually disguise a significant amount of your problems in your business. So we really probably went too long. Ironically, now we're a franchise, and so we're all about processes and systems and leadership and, you know, being mentors and all those things. But in the early days, bro, even our bookkeeper, I shouldn't, you know, broadcast this on a podcast, but we were not negligent intentionally, but I promise we weren't doing things right on tracking expenses and things like that. We just, it was secondary to, everything was secondary to acquisitions. Everything was secondary to sales. And so you're right. At some point we realized, wait a minute, if we want this to be a legitimate business, we need to treat it like that. We need to develop as leaders. And so that put me on a course of understanding what an actual business leader looks like. But it hasn't stopped. I'm here 10 years in, and I'm making a stronger financial commitment this year, 10 years in as an entrepreneur, than I ever have in terms of, you know, and I can go into detail if helpful, but I mean, in terms of events and in terms of specific related training for a CEO, so that my business acumen and my overall leadership and awareness of the triggers and the activities that I need to, you know, improve in are both identified, and then I take action on them. So, but that's been an ongoing journey. You know, the author that has become what I would refer as a mentor of mine, because I've read a few of his books and it's had such an impact, are authors like John Maxwell. I think he's written like 80 something leadership books, but one that really had an impact, Brandon, is the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, because there's an assessment at the end. I encourage you to take the assessment at the end and then read the book and then kind of take it at the end. Again, because all of a sudden your awareness changes, and that awareness allows you to make better choices, and then I think you start to get better results. But 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership was game changer. Jim Rohn. Anyway, I think I'm going on probably too much of a path here for you, but I'm the leadership journey is the one that I can really unpack, because I feel like your business can only go as far as you are developed as a leader, and your investment into the, you know, your leadership.
Yeah, it's. I was actually recording a different podcast earlier today. I was being interviewed in this circumstance. I wasn't the interviewer.
Sure.
And he basically asked, like, what have you learned about yourself through this journey that you didn't know at the beginning? And I was like, that's a really interesting question. And what came to mind immediately was just gratitude for like entrepreneurship as a whole. Because what's really cool is there's no such thing as not having an opportunity for growth in entrepreneurship. Because what happens, like, look, Brandon Bateman today could slay the problems of Brandon Bateman 2 years ago. Because experience is something that you get just after you needed it every single time, right? Because you go through the experience and then suddenly now you have experience, right? And I could do that, but now I can't do what's in front of me. And basically, as you go to business, one of two things happens. Either you're stagnant and then you're just faced with the same problem over and over and over again, or you grow, and by growing, your business then grows, and then it then faces different problems that you have not yet grown enough in order to fix, right? And it's like the crazy journey of entrepreneurship that you're just like, it's literally impossible for you to not be faced with problems that can grow you, because naturally your business will grow to the very edge of where you can take it. And then for you to get past that edge, you're going to have to change as a person.
Bro, that is so good. And I love how you started it with gratitude, that you see that as a positive thing. You know, Patrick Lencioni, I was listening to one of his books. I don't even remember which one now, but, you know, they're short and they're easy to digest. And one of the major takeaways was this idea that, look, you're the CEO, you signed up for it. So you can either be weighed down by what's required of you or you can embrace it. And you can say, this is a cherished, or I'm grateful for these opportunities. So I appreciate you saying that, because that's actually incredibly powerful. You know, it goes along with the idea that the truest form of personal development is entrepreneurship. Like you want to develop as an individual, sign up to run an organization. You articulated that perfectly, though. Yeah.
No, well, thank you. It's something I have to remind myself, because I do, like, don't take me saying this here in public on a podcast. It's like, oh, that guy's always grateful for every challenge that comes across his plate. Like, Many times I'm not, right? But it's important for us to remember what's actually true, right? Because I think our perspective on different situations changes over time. It usually gets a lot more like mature over time. You can look back on things really easily and see how they were beneficial to you. It's really hard when you're in the middle of that problem to feel
It
like this is
is.
something that's actually beneficial to me, right? So we just have to remind ourselves, like, you will look back on this, you will look back on this positively. It's a
Because in the moment,
wild.
it is so hard because you don't see quite when it's going to end or what the benefits of it are. I've had some really challenging things in business. And as you say that, looking back, yeah, it almost gives you this kind of, this gratitude almost gives you a sense of pride, but I think a healthy pride in the sense that like self-accomplishment and gratitude for, like you said, who you're becoming because of those experiences and what it's requiring you to go through. You know, making some of the hardest decisions. In fact, we have our annual conference coming up for our franchisees here soon. And one of the messages I want to share is there's decisions that you're procrastinating in your business that you know will have impact that you haven't made yet because of any number of things, fear, just overall indecision, procrastination. But there's something about when you actually just face the challenge or the obstacle or the thing that's lingering, you know, letting go of somebody that you know is good but not great, or, you know, embracing the idea that you need to, you know, get more involved as a leader and stop being so, what's the word, instead of delegating, you're abdicating, I think is what it is. But it's this idea that, you know, you just set it and forget it. You know, that's not going to serve you well. But whatever those things are in your business, but to challenge, you know, our franchisees, but to, you know, anybody listening, it's like, there's decisions you're making as a CEO that by you not making a decision, you're essentially making a decision and it's impacting the success of your business. You said it a little different a minute ago along the lines of basically your business is going to grow to the level of who you are and how you're operating.
Yeah, yeah, and then it stops.
And then it stops.
Look, everybody knows that, like, theoretically, the idea that your business
Yeah.
can outgrow you. But I can tell you, knowing about it theoretically and actually being in it and feeling it are totally different things. Because, you know, it feels really crappy for your business to want to grow and for you to be the constraint in it actually being able to grow. So I'm curious, let's get specific, Mark, because it's easy to talk about these things like in general. But I'm curious, when you look back at some of the toughest situations that you've had in business so far that have actually grown you as a leader, that helped you become who you are today, what's the first one that comes to mind?
Yeah, I was actually I wondered if we were opening up a Pandora's box with that question, because I'm like, I wonder if I could ask Brandon the same question here. So, you know, maybe I'll give you a chance if you feel appropriate to share yours as well. The biggest challenge I've had is I've had lots of different businesses now over the 10 years, or nuances of businesses. But at the end of the day, the one that is coming to mind is change of responsibilities and even ownership between partners. Those discussions when you have a high level of regard for individuals, your partners, and you always want to be, you know, you're developing on who you are and the impact that you're having. You want to do things the right way, and and for me, I realize that I know that there's some really cutthroat CEOs and they're okay with, like, look, it's for the welfare of my team, it's for the welfare of the company, and they just lower the hammer. For me, I'd say maybe a gift or a curse as I try to be conscientious. And so I try to put myself in the shoes of those that I'm, you know, needing to make tough decisions with. And I think the blessing of that is I am thoughtful and I try to be considerate of the impact that it's going to have. The curse of that is sometimes it puts me in a position where I don't make the decision as precisely as I can. You know, there's that saying and it's a variation of this, but to be kind is to be honest, and to be less than honest isn't kind, or whatever. And for those of you that are familiar with exactly how that phrase goes, I butchered it, but I think it's the idea that, like, if we're not being true to who we are, and if we're not communicating that with clarity at a level that is really truthful, then we're not actually being as kind as we could be. And so that's helped me identify that actually the truest form of being empathetic to their situation is just being honest, and that's actually going to be kind, because I'm not mincing words. But that's the hardest thing for me, is reorganization of ownership and, you know, changing in roles and responsibilities in relationships that are embedded and powerful and you want to maintain at various levels. That has been an extreme challenge over the years.
Yeah, well, it's basically a business divorce. I think
Right.
it always sucks. generally, like nobody's happy. Nobody's
Right.
happy coming out of that. But one thing I will say to highlight one of your strengths is I think there's a lot of people who might not have quite as emotionally difficult of a time with those kinds of things. But I think they also would often not maintain relationships through those tough
That's fair.
conversations quite like you would. It's something I really respect you with. It's like you have, because you genuinely care. You and I have had hard conversations. We've worked together in some capacity over eight 8 or 9 years, something like
That's
that.
right.
Like really a really long time, right? And there have been a number of hard conversations, and never did I once feel like you didn't care about me in any one of those
That's
conversations, or
awesome.
that you didn't have my best interest in mind, or that you wouldn't be a long-term friend, or any of those kinds of things, right? So it's hard, right? Like, and probably that's also your curse, because you care so much that like it pains you when someone else is
Yeah.
in pain through those kinds of situations and stuff. So anyways, but it's, yeah, that's as far as like navigating difficult things and coming out like in a good place. Like I think you're just talking about something that's really hard to do, but like that you're really good at.
Well, I appreciate that, Brandon, and that means a lot. I'm sincerely coming from you, because I know you've interacted with a lot of people, and you want to do things the right way, and I hope I've done that in most situations. I will tell you, I have a lot of confidence that I can face. So, in summary, if I were to say about that the hardest experience, I would tell you, going through that though, I feel like I can make a lot of decisions in my business, and a lot less keeps me up at night, and a lot less challenges me at the core, because facing some of the hardest challenge, it's an instant way to build. Instance an overstatement. It's a great way. I don't know that it's instant. Great way to build additional both business acumen, emotional strength, but ultimately to create confidence as a leader that I can, yeah, this is just another challenge because you faced some of the biggest ones. So that's maybe the invitation as we continue to visit here. Somebody listening, it's like, what prompted me to make one of the decisions was I was reading, there was a question that was put to me actually at a seminar. And the question is, what decision have you been procrastinating that if you made would make all the difference in your business? And that's what triggered, I've got to make, I've got to pivot in our roles and responsibilities and in my partnership. And it was scary. It was daunting. It didn't seem possible. And now looking back, it's like, wow, that was a catalyst for growth. That was an incredible opportunity and challenge. And I have more confidence as a leader, and I can shout from the rooftops or from a stage and tell our franchisees or tell anybody that facing those things will be so rewarding, even if it doesn't go perfectly the way. By the way, it never goes the way that you have, detailed out in your mind. There's curveballs, there's challenges. It's, in a lot of ways, it's more taxing and emotionally challenging, but it's still worth it. Because if you know in your heart of heart, if your business instinct, if your intuition, if you're receiving inspiration from God, if you believe that that's where, your directives are coming, and I do, and you feel that you're being influenced to make some of these challenging decisions, then you have to face them and know that, yes, you won't know exactly. Yeah, in a lot of ways it will be harder or take on curveballs you didn't anticipate, but the confidence and the fruits of it on the other side are so rewarding.
Yes, 100%. The thing that comes to my mind, we've been going deep as a company into like Stephen Covey's stuff recently. We got his nephew, John Covey's doing like a bunch of trainings like with the company over the course of this year. And it's been awesome so far, like just all the stuff. But anyways, one of the things that he talks about is design
That's
versus
cool.
default, in terms of like how you make decisions and how you design your life. And it's
Right.
so fascinating, because if you think of like what were you doing, right, when you were procrastinating that big decision, when you weren't doing the things that you should be doing, it's like you're basically living by default. You're saying this is how it was yesterday, so that's how it's going to be today. Versus by design is to say, if I were to approach this completely with a fresh perspective, what would I build, and would it match what I actually have today? And as humans, we're just so drawn to default, because default is easy because I don't have to change anything. But rarely do we realize how much default costs us, right? And it just allows you to stay the same. It does. It's not a path
Yes,
as
it
much for
does.
growth. Like what you're basically describing is, it's like you're walking up a mountain, and there's like one path that goes like straight up the mountain, and then there's another one in front of you that just kind of continues like sort of flattish. And you were like, you know what? I'm gonna go up that one because that one's hard right now. And
I
you got
love that
higher
analogy.
faster, right? That's good. That was a good thing, but it's a hard decision to make. I think the way that it impacts the average person a lot more because like the business divorce decisions are few and far between, right? But especially parting ways with employees, I put that off way too long so many times. I don't know about you. It's like the lesson you learn over and over again but never actually learn. It's like every time you're like, I waited too long. It's but that's like day to day. It happens to everybody.
It does. Bro, I'm telling you, anybody that listened to your podcast today, you just dropped a crazy bomb. Design versus default. In fact, I pulled up my notepad here and I just made a note of that. Like, that's inspiring because for whatever reason that struck just a chord. Like, yeah, that's exactly the way to describe it. We operate by default. We choose the moseying around the mountain and the base and take steps up every once in a while. And at the rate we're going, we'll get where we want to go in 20 years if we don't have some market shift or health concern or something like that versus going straight up the mountain. That visualization that you created and just those two words, or, design versus default, and then visualizing it as, yeah, you have to do it by design. It goes back to that idea, of getting clarity of vision. You get super clear on where you're going, and then you can be intentional. You know exactly how you're taking on the mountain, but it's so much easier to just, bro, I'm grubbing on this. It's so much easier to just resort back to your default mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I can tell you, and not even my words, right? Those are from Stephen Covey, but I can tell you let me put out sorry, people listening to this are going to be like, this is just like a podcast of Brandon just saying like nice things about Mark. Not intended what it's supposed to be, because I'm using you as an example of like, things I've learned. But so there's kind of, and I'm putting something really emotional into words, right? So it might not make perfect sense, but if you read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People as a book, I don't know if you've read it. Fantastic.
I have.
Right.
Yes.
And you can look at it and he talks about it like there's the personality ethic and there's the character ethic. And they're kind of like these two separate things. And the idea is that like it's about changing who you are inside out, and then you produce the outcomes that you care about, not changing outside in. And it, absolute best framework for personal development, for leadership, like all of the above, in my opinion. And, so you read, like, if you just put that book and you read it and you read a bunch of other books, like next to it, just like your standard, like, oh, say things this way kind of books or whatever, all focused on personality. This is how you change your personality to be successful versus changing your character to be successful. Yeah. It resonates completely differently because you realize like, this is true on a higher level than all that other stuff, right? It's like more pure, more true, more like, I don't even know what the word is.
Authentic to the core.
Yeah, authentic to the core is a great example. And the reason I'm giving that example is through like the years that I've been in business, through all the different people I've met with, like one thing that's continually drawn me to you is when I talk to you, I feel like I'm reading The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And when I talk to a lot of other people, I feel like I'm kind of like getting that like slightly slimier version that maybe produces a similar outcome, but it's not authentic to its core. And I've actually heard the same thing to many people who've like jumped on with Joe Homebuyer. I'm like, well, why'd you choose to do it? And they're basically just saying like, I feel like I found my people. Like, I feel like these are the people that I resonate with. These are the people that match my values, right? And they feel it in such a strong way and they recognize that. And it's cool, right? Because we're talking about leadership in this growth journey that you went on from like, selling vinyl fences to like leading this whole franchise company. It's cool because like all those elements that we're talking about, like that's what it looks like to lead culture, right? It's a good takeaway for everybody listening to this. Like as you're looking in your business, like, am I the kind of person that feels that authentic to where people are willing to leave whatever they're doing and come to work for me? And even if I'm paying them less money, even if like the circumstances are a little bit more risky, like, do I create that kind of connection with people where they feel, because like what is a leader at the end of the day, right? Like the word leader, what does it mean? It means like somebody who people follow, right? Right. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's lots of great definitions.
It was, Anyway, I'll let you finish your rant, and then I can chime in here.
Yeah, rant over. I guess all I'm trying to say is like, yeah, I'm saying those aren't my words or someone else's, but also like draw that parallel of that. that's the value of developing yourself as a person. I know this because I know you, like you approach like every day for so many years with so much humility, right? Anybody who's had a conversation with you can say that, like, I felt nothing but humility from Mark, that he was here for me, that he was trying to learn everything he could in this situation. He didn't think he was right. He didn't lean on his authority. That means that he's more right because he's this person, because he's accomplished these things. It's like he's actually just focused on being like the kind of person who's worth following. And it's crazy. And honestly, I think that's where a lot of the success of Joe Homebuyer comes from, because you have attracted so many people that see that and that value that, and in that process of following you, they've grown themselves. And in that process, as the franchisor, you also benefit as well. It's a cool system.
Yeah, dude. Brandon, I'll be on a podcast anytime you want. You just tell me. I'm feeling like $1 million hanging out with you. I do have a comment though. I think it's important that we offset some of this. You're inflating my ego here. So we need to talk about, because this would be a meaningful conversation for anybody listening. So what are the weaknesses? Like, what do I struggle with as a leader? Because there's realities. And one thing that I'd want to unpack with you here is, the truth is, as a leader, one of the things I struggle with is I'm not holding my team to a high enough level of accountability. Now, I'll stop and say, truthfully, only people can hold themselves accountable, but creating an atmosphere of accountability where they can hold themselves to a high standard. That has been something I've struggled with. And I've identified lately that I'm all about good feelings. I'm all about being vulnerable and having high levels of integrity and being mindful of the needs of others, and what all those things are that good leaders do. But remember, good leaders create more good leaders. So am I creating more good leaders? Well, one of the things I could do to create more good leaders is I could create an atmosphere of accountability, an atmosphere where when you say you're going to do something, it gets done, and that there's obviously the easy answer of, there's no excuses, that type of thing. But more than that, I think it's this idea that, like, they want to achieve because of the commitment they made, because there's standards that are so clear in the organization that not hitting those standards, the outcomes maybe aren't always controllable, but the standards, the habits, the activity, the critical drivers that we're committed to each day, those things are controllable. That's an effort and energy type thing. That's a getting clear on what I need to do and then just sticking with it. And I have to admit, that has been an area that I'm very much conscious of today, because I have not been as honest with my team as, in fact, I had a junior guy on my team that's young and ambitious, 22 years old. He's the one that actually called me out on it recently. He goes, "Tell me what you're really saying." And we have a high level of regard for each other, so I wasn't offended or anything. He says, "What are you actually saying?" Because I was teaching a principle on how we need to be more focused and we need to use time blocks in the business. And he's like, "Okay, I get it. I can do that. I can have 60-minute sessions and stay totally focused." Because you have the culture of, you want to have fun, you have culture, you want to, have water cooler talk and all those different things. And so I said, and I think it's getting a little, out of control type thing. I think we need to have focus time where everybody's honoring each other's focus time. And then he said, "But what are you actually saying?" And when it actually got to the crux, it was, we don't have a high enough level of, like, urgency and accountability that, like, if we're not on track, that we're going to move heaven and earth and that we're going to do it. We're getting soft. We're not producing at the level that we need to. And it was cool to have him kind of invite me to say, no. Okay, if you're saying that I'm not producing at the level and I'm not performing at the level, then tell me that and say, one of the ways we're going to fix this is we're going to have focused time and we're going to have dedicated time in the office where we don't get distracted, or whatever it is. But I went 90% of the way there, but I wasn't. Anyway, so I'm glad I could share that, because it's almost having me commit again today of full level, of taking the full measure of accountability and challenging my team.
Yeah. I maybe I need to connect you with, there's this guy on my team. His name's Corey. And this guy is like, he's like a wizard. I don't know how to describe how he does leadership, because it's incredibly effective. But we had, you had asked me before, like, what the biggest, like, challenge I had gone through was. Yeah. And I can tell you, for me, it's super simple. It's that the culture in my company was absolutely horrible and it was my fault. And this is, I don't know if you guys have ever measured employee net promoter score. Fantastic measurement. If you're not familiar, right? So for anybody listening that doesn't
Two
know Net
questions,
Promoter
right?
Score, yeah, it's usually the question number one: how likely are you to recommend working at Bateman Collective to, I guess, insert your company name to a friend? And then question number two: why'd you say that? Basically, and
Yeah.
the idea is to get 100 on that, which like never happens. You need all nines or tens. To get
Yeah.
negative 100, which is the worst score, you need all less than six. Anything less than six is called a detractor. And zero would mean like we have as many, what's the opposite of detractor? Like
Disciples.
that's not the right word, but that's a great word. We'll roll with that. We're like disciples as we do detractors, right? And it just kind of ignores
Sure.
the neutral people. It says if they're 7 or 8, they're kind of like like a
Yeah.
little bit in, a little bit out. And so that measurement is negative 100 to 100. Normal is like 10 to 30. And I started out, we were hitting 45, and I was like, look, we're killing it. And then we increased our employee count by 260% in 6 months when the real estate market was going crazy. And that went like way down. It got as far as like negative 70. Really, really, really bad. You probably never have worked in a culture as bad as the culture was in my company at
Oh,
that
wow.
time. And it would teeter between like negative 70 and like zero, right? So we're like neutral at best, and that was
Sure.
like years. And then we figured it out based on a whole bunch of things. Now we're sitting at like positive 70. And we
Oh,
have
wow.
these surveys where we have like all the information of people, why they say. So anyways, the reason I get down to this is it's so weird because we get those things that we can filter by department. So this guy, Corey, he owns a whole department. It's the biggest department in the company. He's got like 30, he's got probably 25 to 30 people on his team,
Wow. Sure.
indirectly. He's a leader of leaders within that team and stuff like that. So, and these words just kept on popping up out of that survey. We're like, we don't use these words as a company, but somehow the exact same two words are popping up in the survey and every single thing. And the words were, I feel challenged and supported.
Wow.
And I thought it was such an interesting combination that like they simultaneously, because if we think of like when people think of good culture, sometimes they think of like the basketball games and the ping pong and the
I
water
love
cooler
that.
talk and
Yeah.
like, and that's like some of that stuff is the supported side, right? Where I feel like this is a place I want to be. It's with people I want to work with. But we forget too that A players like to be challenged. It turns out A players really like accountability. They like to be
You
disciplined,
do.
right? It's this whole
Well
different
said.
side, right? So it's this weird mix of like how do you create this environment where I feel incredibly challenged, like I have to bring my best to work every single day, and also I feel incredibly supported. That it's not me versus the company. Like the company wants me to succeed in this. They're on my side. They're going to give me everything I can. We just recently hired someone, and I was doing like the 30-day check-in with this person, just seeing how they're doing. They're like, I didn't realize until I showed up. Like I've always been the smartest place at every company I've ever worked at. I've always been the hardest worker at every company I've worked at. But I showed up here and I was like, I got to step it up because what I've done in
Oh,
my
wow.
career up to this point doesn't work here because I feel like the dumbest guy in the room and I feel like the laziest person in the room as soon as I get here. And that's what causes
Oh,
me to like
wow.
step up.
Wow.
And it's crazy. Yeah. Anyways, so I'm telling you like what the outcome, like what it looks like if you nail this, because this guy, he leads this department and he just absolutely kills it. Now, how he does it, I don't 100% know exactly how he does it as effectively as he does, but it's insane that like his team just so
And
consistently
you would
feels so
attribute a lot of
challenged.
this, you so supported and so challenged. You would suggest that Corey has had as much impact in this turnaround on your NPS rating than anything in the company.
Yes, and he's been here for about a year, and the improvement we've been doing good for longer than that.
Got it.
But so it's not exclusively him, although it's worth saying that before him we had someone else who was also really incredible leading that department, and
Right.
then they left. And actually, he and Corey, those two people had worked together for like 10 years at a different company, so we just kind of like
Okay.
switched one out for the other. So they,
Yeah.
awesome. They were both awesome. And yeah, I would say us having someone really great in that role has made a big difference, whether it's Corey or the guy before him. But it changed how I view culture a little bit, right? Because I used to think it's like you're soft and you're nice, or it's like you're hard and you're disciplined. And Corey has this style of leadership where it's like it's extremely disciplined, and you know that he expects the world of you, and you know that he would do anything to help you run through that wall that you need to run through, basically, because he's the kind of person that makes you want to run through the wall for him because you respect him and you want and he's like a quality leader. So it's wild thing. But yeah, I don't know that I figured out how to do that, but I like, but it's crazy. It's crazy if you build the right culture, because that's actually the best case scenarios, because these people who are really, really talented and ambitious, these like real A players, like they like that discipline.
Bro, but that's a credit to you, whether you would acknowledge that or not. The fact that you've got a big enough vision to get a quality guy like that is creating and supporting the culture at that level, that's a reflection on you as the owner, as you as the CEO, that you've attracted such quality talent. That's incredible. Because the truth is, I would hope that we're bringing on A players on our team that are better than us at certain things. And I think you're right. You just nailed it on the head. I think I see culture a lot of times the way that you described it as, just a good place to work and safe. They feel, excited to come because of the atmosphere and the camaraderie and those type of things. And all those things are important. But you're right. A players like to be challenged, and you just nailed it on the head. And they like to have accountability. They want to know that what they're doing actually contributes and matters. So, bro, that's awesome. Yeah. And I need an intro to Corey. I'd love to have a conversation. Sincerely, this is not just I'm on the podcast with you. I'd love if I've talked with Corey before. I'd love to actually have that conversation if that's appropriate.
Yes, sir. You got it. And if you're listening to this podcast and you are a client of ours, then I might be able to get one for you tue. Maybe we'll do a training with Corey. Like I like Corey's leadership trainings internally, and I'm just like drooling, like listening to every word he says. Like like this guy's like
cool.
Yeah, he's awesome. So Mark, this has been an awesome conversation. We are gonna have to wrap it up because we both have a commitment soon. I will tell you, I will give you the floor here for a minute. If there's anything that you feel like we haven't touched on that you feel is impactful or you want to share, go ahead.
Well, this is going to go a complete different direction than most people would anticipate on the call. But I found that this is something that it really gives me energy to talk about. And that is that all good characteristics that a leader is aspiring to embody are really, I believe, eternal principles. They were embodied by our Creator, and we have a perfect example of that in the Savior, the way he demonstrated his life. So for me, I can't end a call if somebody gives me the floor to say, okay, we've been talking about leadership today. The ultimate leader was the Savior. I need to recalibrate daily to see what characteristics does he have that I'm not even close on, and how could I embody them better. But I have to tell you, when I use him as the example, and I recalibrate regularly on a spiritual level, and I get to know his life and get to know him, that has been one of the more rewarding things. And it also helps me navigate tough things. In fact, with ChatGPT today, you can even leverage scripture in that type of thing. You can even say, okay, if the Savior or Jesus was my advisor on this, what would he advise me in this situation? And so you can leverage that technology, and it can reference scriptures and things like that. So thank you for the invitation to just quickly say that there is a spiritual element, I think, because the things that you read in the books, they existed from the beginning. The ideas of who you should be as a husband, father, and impact in general, and who you're becoming as a leader, they existed from the beginning. So although they're packaged in different books and in different ways, it's not new concepts. It's you becoming the best version of yourself. So I'm grateful that we could dive into that today. But the Savior held people accountable too, right? He challenged people. He expected the most out of people and expected them to continue to try. So that's what I mean. They all come back to the original source. So anyway, grateful to be able to have a meaningful conversation with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. It takes a little courage to say that in like a business setting where that's absolutely not a normal thing to say. But I can tell it's like that's who you authentically are. I'm going to give an additional challenge here. Like if you believe in God, good. If you don't, recognize Jesus was a really good leader, because
that's right.
What makes somebody a good leader is that people are following them. And how many people are following Jesus now, 2,000 years since he died? And he's not even here anymore, right? The guy had like a 3-year ministry, right? So it's even if you just like completely non-religiously like studied exactly what Mark's talking about here, like it's a fantastic, like Jesus is a fantastic example of leadership qualities. And the New Testament's a great leadership read, believe it or not. So cool. Thank you, Mark. For anybody listening to this that wants to get a hold of you or connect with Joe Homebuyer, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. And I hope you felt a sense for who we are as an organization and what's important to us. But we work with existing investors that want to scale and grow their business to the next level. It's not for newbies. It's those that are already doing the business and are ready to be part of a community, have ongoing mentorship, a playbook, and actually take their business to the next level, both as an individual, as a leader, and ultimately results. Obviously, revenue is important. Success is important. But you can find us at joehomebuyerfranchising.com. You can follow me, just Mark Stubler, on Instagram. And yeah, brother, I would love to connect with people that feels like the right thing for them.
Cool. Thank you, Mark, once again for taking your time today. We'll have to bring you on the podcast again another time to talk about a different topic. But
Let's do it.
for everybody else listening, thank you for spending this time with Mark and I today, and I will see you next week.